Welcome to my channel. My name is Anu Pandey, and you are watching the second episode of the video series Empowered Beyond Abuse. And today, I am very delighted to welcome our guest, Stephanie Nartaki Heinhold. Stephanie is a physical therapist and a certified wellness coach. She is also trained in plant based medicine, lifestyle medicine, plant based nutrition, and trauma informed care. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. It's such a great pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to sharing some wisdom in whatever ways I can.
Thank you so much. Okay, so my first question is, when a woman has lived in a chronically stressful or abusive environment, what are some of the physical signs her body may carry even long after the abuse ends?
Yeah, this is a great question. The first things that come to mind are chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and fibromyalgia syndromes. What we know now from some of the latest research is that emotions can get stuck and can actually get carried in excessive muscle tension, increased inflammatory response, as well as a heightened sensitivity to threats. It's actually a mechanism that our sensory system and our pain receptors become hijacked by the trauma and start creating more pain than what is actually there. So while headaches, neck pain, and low back pain can have mechanical causes, these can also be symptoms of stored non-processed emotions. We are also noticing now that the gut is the second brain. So when we're under trauma or stress or have survived abuse, GI symptoms like irritable bowel syndrome can be impacted as well. I also want to recognize the fact that insomnia, nightmares, and flashbacks also impact the body's ability to adequately rest enough for deeper healing. So we can feel excessively fatigued, we can feel like our brains are fogged, or we can be unable to concentrate or focus.
That's really too much. And people think that it's just all in your head.
Right.
Okay. It's actually in your body. Most of it is in your body. Okay. So you talk about healing from the inside out. For a trauma survivor, what does that really mean in the context of physical and emotional wellness?
Yeah, healing from the inside out is really focused on being compassionate with ourselves on our own healing journey, recognizing that we do have a choice to turn a new page, to find worth, value, and empowerment from within ourselves as we connect into our higher power who is filled with loving mercy. This is where that connection to our wise adult self, along with our higher power, can help give us intuition and insights from within ourselves to help support our healing journey. It can be in those aha moments that show up in, oh, this is something that I can try to move one step forward. There is a quote that I actually really love about the idea of healing. And this quote states that healing is a state of acceptance in which we are agreeable to being changed by the events in our lives. We learn from our distress, find our strengths, and move into a new way the world presents itself. Each person is on their own timeline in how they heal, but healing is possible when given the right tools and environment to safely explore how we want to move forward in our lives. So healing from the inside out acknowledges that our physical and emotional wellness is multifaceted, and we can start at any point that feels safe enough for us to explore.
Okay. Um, Many survivors feel disconnected from their bodies. How can physical therapy or gentle movement practices help in reestablishing that mind body connection?
First off, I do want to acknowledge the depth of disconnection that can be there and how it will take time to feel safe inside your own skin, especially if there has been sexual and physical abuse. But I have experienced within myself that even emotional abuse and manipulation has caused me to disconnect from my sensory system and intuitive sense. And so choosing to reestablish the mind-body connection is actually an act of courage and can be best accomplished with somebody who is trauma-informed coming alongside you to support you. Because as you mentioned, it does need to be gentle in the approach. One of the aspects that's getting a lot of attention in research right now is vagus nerve stimulation. Anything that can help calm our fight, flight, and freeze response. And that can be done through breath work, gentle touch, or grounding meditations. Tai Chi, yoga, and Pilates all incorporate breath work that helps damp down our stress response, reminding us that we can find safety within our bodies and reconnect to who we are beyond the abuse or trauma. But I also like to mention that choosing movement that moves you can be super powerful. So choosing gentle movement that helps you feel comfortable in your own skin, that's really where the nectar comes in. And an individualized approach is really critical to finding what will work for each individual person.
Okay. What role does lifestyle like sleep, food, and movement play in trauma recovery? And what is your take on where a survivor should start?
Great question. Yeah, lifestyle really does matter because it pulls us into how are we caring for ourselves. And there's something that has been lost in today's society, from my perspective, and that is the critical role of self-care and self-love and self-respect. But that is also rooted in self-awareness, recognizing where our trauma and abuse has led us down the path of self-abandonment, potentially emotional eating, or giving in to fatigue, which keeps you sedentary. So the more that we understand about how our lifestyle choices can either fuel downward spiral or pull us out of survival mode into a greater aspect of healing, the greater chance we have of making wise choices. We'll talk, food is critical for the immune system, inflammation, and hormone regulation. What we feed our bodies are the nutrients that we need to function well. So when we feed our bodies well, our bodies will treat us better, helping improve our mental health, physical health, and emotional health. As far as movement goes, we know that getting outside, nature bathing, can be a critical aspect in getting us in touch with the earth and other living beings around us. But any sort of movement can help start the process on helping that body reconnect to strength, endurance, and perseverance. And then sleep can be very, very critical. Sleep is when we rest, when our bodies can recalibrate, when our cells can recalibrate. So finding ways to make sure sleep is optimized is also critical. However, that being said, this can be a lot of information, and we need to remember that even the smallest changes can have a big impact over time. So I am really focused on starting small, in a spot that stretches someone, but doesn't push into a state of overwhelm. And finding that fine balance can be a little bit of a challenge, but the more we look at lifestyle change as an experiment and a trial, then we can learn and figure out what works for us and what might not.
Okay. What are some common myths about healing, especially physical healing after abuse, that you would like to debunk for our listeners?
The first myth that I would like to debunk is that healing is linear and is on a certain set time frame. Healing is an ever unfolding, ever evolving journey filled with layers of self discovery, self awareness, and upgrading our choices in light of the wisdom we receive along the way. One thing I do like to say is we do the best we can with what we have. But when we know better, we can start to do better. And so that's an area that helps us support self compassion when we might fall into the traps of reacting and automatic responses, while also working towards and striving towards incorporating wisdom. The other myth that goes back to kind of that first question that was asked, especially in Western medical community, that chronic pain, fibromyalgia, or other symptoms that are actually rooted in trauma and abuse are all just simply in the person's head, and that there aren't any physical symptoms. I do want to say your physical symptoms are very real. Your body is actually feeling what you feel. There is new research coming out that shows that physical changes in the brain are occurring with very many various chronic and even acute conditions that were previously thought to be simply psychological in nature. So recognizing that there are actual brain changes, nervous system changes, and muscular changes can help give us that self-compassion we need to work towards healing. But this is where it's important to have that multifaceted and trauma-informed approach to help discover what is really going on.
That's very important information that you shared with us. Okay, so you are trained in plant based nutrition. For survivors who have lost touch with the self care, how can simple nutrition shifts help them begin to feel stronger again?
Yeah, food is fuel for our bodies and minds. And so the right nutrients can really help us fuel our bodies in ways that are beyond measure. But having the right relationship with food is also critical in ensuring we aren't falling into any abnormal patterns that place us at greater risk for problems. So I do like to take away the conception of good foods and bad foods, instead replacing that with foods that fuel our bodies and foods that satisfy our bodies. Now, the ideal would be to have foods that fuel and satisfy, but it takes time for our taste buds to change over. So recognizing that concentrated sugar, salt, and ultra processed foods are highly addictive helps us to understand that reaching for that apple and eating that apple instead of that candy bar will taste like poison in the beginning as our taste buds are changing out. But the more we add whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and beans, these are the nutrients that impact every cellular function of the body and add fuel to our body and our minds that can help put us in a position to face challenges, to heal both inner and outer wounds and traumas with greater success. So the more we feed ourselves with the micronutrients that our bodies are craving, the more our bodies will respond with strength and endurance and clarity of mind and empowerment. As far as food goes, and driving home this idea of micronutrients and cellular feeding of our cells through whole foods, there's an analogy I like to use, and that is an analogy of an apple having 8.4 milligrams of vitamin C. This appears to be a tiny amount compared to a 500 milligram vitamin C supplement. However, because of all the other micronutrients found in that apples, our bodies transform that 8.4 milligrams into 1,500 milligrams of power. So really, there is no substitute for whole nutrient-dense foods empowering our minds and bodies towards optimal functioning.
Wow, that's really very powerful information. Okay, many survivors carry guilt about not bouncing back quickly. From your experience, what is a more realistic and compassionate way to look at recovery?
Can I speak from personal experience here?
Yes, of course, that would be so useful, so valuable. Please go ahead.
Excellent. Yeah, so my own recovery from various abuse, stress, and trauma has been a complete roller coaster. It has been at least a decade-long journey, if not longer. I am deeply aware within myself that when I'm under extra stress or sensory stimulation, my chronic pain will be significantly higher than when I'm calm, just because that sensory system is on that heightened state of awareness. So recognizing that what we feel in states of heightened stress are manifestations of that trauma and that past experience, and being able to acknowledge that is happening and bring conscious awareness to that can help us move through and work with whatever is going on in our bodies with greater success. There is another aspect that I want to bring into play with this question, and Richard Rohr speaks about unnecessary suffering in his book, Falling Upwards. And so that guilt and signs of external shame, whatever guilt we might feel over not healing quickly enough, can be a sign of that societal pressure to bounce back quickly. So the more we acknowledge the depth of what we have survived with compassion, the more we can find small victories on our journey, celebrate those small victories, and accept that healing is a dance between facing what we must to heal without sending us into a state of overwhelm. And the same is true for all lifestyle changes. We want to stretch ourselves without falling into the pit of overwhelm that causes us to throw in the towel and give up.
Okay. You work through a trauma-informed lens. How is your approach different from general fitness or wellness advice survivors might find online?
Yeah, general fitness and wellness advice doesn't take into account the dynamics of the individual person, especially someone who might have disassociated from their body, is dealing with chronic pain or any other conditions related to the nervous system that have been hijacked by anxiety, fear, or a general sense of the body being an unsafe vessel. So when we're looking at general advice, that is looking through a lens of a population that might not have been through what the individual has been through. And one thing I have found true for myself, as well as others I have worked with, is that trauma, abuse, and stress are breeding grounds for perfectionism and an all or nothing mentality, which can lead into a failure trap quickly and set us way back on our healing journey. So when we look to general fitness advice without taking into account the unique needs of our bodies, that can set us up for failure, because we can fall into a trap of overhauling everything. And then when we fail, that fuels the fire for that shame cycle that we're caught up in most of the time. So trauma-informed lens does acknowledge the dynamics of working with a dysregulated nervous system caught in pain, anxiety, and fear. I take a softer approach rooted in empowering the individual to make choices that stretch just enough to make gains without causing that overwhelm or that failure state. Through understanding the multifaceted nature of trauma and emotions getting stuck in the various body systems, we can understand the deep need for a holistic approach that focuses on mind, body, and spirit in dance of integration that will be unique for each individual. And I always like to remind people that slow and steady wins the race. By taking time to guide others in consciously connecting back into their various body sensations, we can work on adding movement and exercise into the healing journey. We can tap into wisdom that helps us know what sensations need our attention versus what sensations are a natural part of healing. And this is where someone who is trauma informed has gone through their own journey of healing and is rooted in compassion and empathy can hold a deeper transformative power than anything we may get online.
Amazing. For women still in toxic situations, who are living with abusers or recovering with limited support, what is one body based or wellness tip they can begin using today?
I always come back to the power of the breath. If we can take time to focus on slowing down our breath, breathing in relaxation and healing, while breathing out stress, fear, pain, and tension, we can bring our vagus nerve back online, which halts the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response and brings back our capacity for reasoning and critical thinking. Taking time for breath work 2 or 3 times a day can support our vagus nerve's ability to be in greater control, regulating our heart rate and blood pressure response to whatever stressors may come our way. Practicing the pause in the midst of chaos, connecting to your breath, and stepping away to gain a sense of clarity and perspective can help you respond with deeper intuitive wisdom guiding the way.
All right. Finally, if you say one sentence to a woman out there silently surviving, what would you want her to hear from you right now?
This is something that I say to myself frequently, especially when I get caught in my own survival mode. And that is, you are worthy, valuable, wise, strong, and capable of healing and thriving.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your time and insights with us today. It was a great conversation and looking forward to more such conversations with you.
Thank you very much, Anu.
Okay, bye bye.